Hey Gator fans, Allie Peak here with Dan Thompson, one of the hosts of Stadium and Gale and opiner of all things Gator athletics. Dan, thanks for coming on. It's been a while.
Thank you for having me, Allie. It has. It's been a while, and thanks for having me on.
Of course. Okay, so we were talking before we went live here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you that this season is a little over 2 weeks away?
It's an exciting time, I think, for a lot of Gator fans. It's an exciting time. I think this is the first time in, I don't know, probably 7, 8 years that you kind of feel confident going into the year. I know in that COVID year, you expected the team to do pretty well, but I think that this is probably the best roster that the Gators have had top to bottom in terms of excitement and playmakers and individuals at key positions, defensive line, linebacker. I think this is probably the best offensive line, at least best returning offensive line that we've had since maybe 2009, 2010, kind of that time frame. Obviously, DJ Lagway is a potential Heisman candidate as well. Brings a lot of excitement. And I think that this is a year, especially if you can start off strong, that the Gator fans should be looking forward to. And yeah, I think there's a sense, there's a different sense amongst fans, and it seems like amongst the coaching staff as well. Billy Napier and the way the coaches are talking, the way the players are talking, that they're exuding a lot more confidence than they previously have.
You mentioned some of Florida's strengths. If you had to pick one room on the offensive side of the ball that you have the absolute most confidence in, what are you picking?
Offensive line. I think you're returning 4 starters. You have 5 players that have over 300 snaps played. All of them were ranked in the top 15 in rushing or in rush blocking last season. So that's something incredible, right? You don't often return your left tackle and All-American center. Everybody except for your right tackle. And, there's certainly a lot of depth potentially on our offensive line, that we've heard about. And, being able to trade out some of those players so that they can, get refreshed on the sidelines in the middle of the game should hopefully bode well for what this Gators offense could look like. So I'm probably most excited about the offensive line. If not, then I think the running back room is probably one of the more underrated running back rooms in the country.
You have been a Gator fan for a long time, so you can, and you're not quite as old as me, but you can relate to our little generation here. Like, I feel like there was 10, 15 years where the offensive line was our biggest weakness. And it was something like, I think back to our Muschamp years and offensive linemen blocking each other and such. Like, we have some PTSD from offensive line times, but I agree. I think this is probably the best offensive line since the Pounceys played on it, which is wild. So, there's so many strengths on offense, but if you had to pick a room that you are interested to see some growth in, maybe not even call it a weakness, but where are you looking?
Yeah, I think the tight end position is an easy one to point out. The tight end in Billy Napier's offense is not going to be the sexiest position to play. They're going to be expected to block and be an extension of the offensive line. But I would like to see what Tony Livingston might be able to do, or Hayden Hansen, with another year in the program, or even Amir Jackson, a guy that didn't get the chance to play much. He's a different, more pass-catching tight end than the Gators have historically had under Billy Napier. So I think that that's a group I'd like to see involved a little bit more in their ability to be able to move the ball downfield. And I have a hot take here. I think a lot of people are really excited about the wide receiver room, and I am too. I think that there's a lot of potential in that room. There's not a lot of proven numbers in that room. J. Michael Sturdivant has had some good games in his career at Cal and UCLA. Trey Wilson's been injured, multiple times in his career at Florida, and you've seen flashes from him. You've seen some flashes from Aiden Mizell.
I know I talk about Alumni Hall all the time, but I really do shop here too. Got off the exit Archer Road, headed straight here. Guys, we have made it. Football season is upon us. Make sure you have everything you need to be game day ready. Come into the store on Archer Road, or you can go ahead and order online at alumnihall.com. They've got great brands, all the latest Nike, Cutter and Buck, Peter Millar, Southern Tide, everything right here in store or online. So make sure you check them out.
And then there's a lot of players that have as many snaps as you and I do on this team that you're going to count on, right? And there's no reason to not be super excited about Dallas Wilson or Vernell Brown or Nashawn Montgomery, a guy who I'm very, very high on, who I think is slept on in this class, or Maurice Tenkara. But that's just where I have, some question marks too. It's very different to being very athletic and being a highly sought after recruit than it is to produce. And if you have DJ Lagway as your quarterback, there's gonna be a lot of expectation, but there is a question mark, I think, on all three of those positions in terms of, returning production, and what they can be is certainly greater than what they are now. But I think there's every reason for me to believe that when you're replacing Elijah Badger and Shim DK, who accounted for 90% of the receiving yards last year, that's still a tall task to ask for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of promise in that room,
You're
but
right.
need some reps. Let's flip the question, other side of the ball. What room on the defensive side are you most confident in, most excited to see?
That edge rushing group is, I think, one of the better in the country. You have Tyreek Sapp and Cam James on one side. You have Jalen Wiggins, who we've heard great things about this offseason as a freshman. And on the other side, you have George Gums and LJ McCray. You have Jaden Woods, who's the recruit that I'm most excited about out of this last recruiting class. You bring in the UMass transfer and Kofi Asari, too. I think that you have 7 guys that can play the defensive end position at the University of Florida tomorrow. And so being able to rotate those guys out and get them in a position to stay refreshed in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, I think that is a group that could cause a lot of havoc this upcoming season. And I think Tyreek Sapp and George Gums are going to be names that people around the SEC and around the country are going to know. But don't sleep on Cam James. Don't sleep on LJ McCray. And then I think Jaden Woods is going to get a lot more snaps than people think he is as a freshman.
Well, and, for us Gator fans, our most successful years are when our defense is dominant. We talk this whole offseason lots and lots about offense, but defense is where Florida shines when they're really good. What room, do you think has some questions you still need to be answered?
I think you have a depth issue in the entire defensive backfield. I think whether that's cornerback or safety, I think you have a good starting 6, maybe. Devin Moore, Jordan Castell, Bryce Thornton, Dijon Johnson, Cormani McLean, Sharif Denson, Aaron Gates. So what is it, 6, 7 people? Yeah. After that, it gets very young, very quick, very inexperienced. And if there is an injury or two at the safety position, Florida's going to be counting on 2 true freshmen to play.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask for. Now, certainly the further you play away from the ball, the easier it is to get on the field. But playing safety in the SEC is no easy task for any freshman to do, no matter how highly sought after you are as a recruit. So that is a concern that I have. I'd like to see some more development out of Teddy Foster, Jamrock, previously known as Jameer Grimsley. I know he's been dealing with some injuries. Michael Caraway Jr., the transfer from Southern Miss, haven't heard much about him this offseason. So I do think that if there is any sort of potential injury or just even a stinger of something going on, that is a concern for me. I do think that it benefits the fact that they have some great defensive ends that'll be able to get to the quarterback and hopefully rush some throws. But that is a room that we talked about yesterday on Stadium and Gale that I didn't realize how thin it was until you look, pardon me, at the number of players you have, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Prayers to the big guy.
It is a huge plus that, exactly as you pointed out, that Florida does have such a strong defensive line, because that, I think sometimes on past Napier teams, the safeties and the DB room in general gets a little bit more blame than maybe they even deserved, because they were not they were having to do their job for too long, essentially. And I don't think that will be a problem that they encounter this year. You mentioned injuries, in a hope this doesn't happen sense, but let's talk a little bit about the injuries that have happened this offseason. Let's start with Lagway. The rumor mill has been going all summer long. He is out there at camp now. Where are you on this injury? Do you think he stays healthy this season? Do you have any concern level at all? Or this is good, he's ready to go, season's going to be fine?
I don't know. They kind of keep it like Fort Knox with information. And I think the fact that some of these things came out weren't supposed to come out the way that they did in terms of injuries. There's been a number of things that DJ Lagway has struggled with health wise since he's been at the University of Florida, some that people have talked about, some that people haven't talked about. I'm hopeful, that this calf injury does go away. I worry about when you talk about shoulders, when you talk about hamstrings, when you talk about calves, that some of those can be nagging injuries or can get re-aggravated, especially your shoulder, especially your hamstring can get re-aggravated a little bit easier than some other injuries that you might have. So I think that there's some concern, obviously DJ Lagway is an incredibly smart young man. He knows the offense very well. I think that he has a lot more chemistry with these wide receivers than people think that he does, even though he hasn't maybe thrown as much as you would like to see this offseason with them, especially because when he was the second string quarterback, a lot of guys he's throwing to were the second team wide receivers on that team. But there is concern that he hasn't practiced a ton this offseason, right? And that we were dealing with a pitch count with the shoulder, and then we have the calf issue. We had the hamstring issue last year. So I'm just hopeful that he gets healthy. I think the entire season really rests on him being healthy for the duration of the year. I do think it's beneficial for Florida's backups that if there is something that nags or something that keeps them out of a game, that they've gotten a chance to go against a good defense and you've got a lot more in-game or a lot more reps under their belt than they maybe otherwise would have. But I think that there is a reason for, at least some minor concern going into the season. Now, starting the season against LIU, I think is very, very helpful. I think a lot of people are writing off USF as like a 51-0 victory for UF, and I don't think it'll be quite that easy. But I do think, playing those two games to start the year before you go into LSU, then Miami, and then Texas. I mean, that's a hell of a stretch that they have after that. So, I hope that he can stay healthy, and I hope that he can continue to get better and mature. I think he completely understands the playbook. I think he understands exactly what he's supposed to do on the field, but you can't replicate that if you're not doing 11-on-11 drills right, like he's not right now.
Where are you at on Florida's overall health? Webb is obviously out. We're here. If everything goes as planned, he's back in time for SEC play. We did just get Wilson and Jackson out of non-contact jerseys. The last couple of days, the reports have been relatively injury-free. I didn't see what today's are, so unless there was something that came out today, I think we're doing all right. But where are you?
LJ McCray got a little stinger, so he's out for a little while. He'll be back relatively soon. There's another injury now that I don't know how serious it is, so I'm not in a position to really talk about what that is. And I think that person will be back relatively soon as well. You have some players that have had some nagging injuries, and you've had some of these key playmakers deal with injuries that, I hope don't affect their season. But so far, football is a sport where you're going to get dinged up, you're going to get hurt. And I think if a lot of these guys were in the middle of the season, you handle it different than you are going to in the preseason as well, right? In terms of trying to get these guys as healthy as humanly possible as they enter the season. So I'm not super worried yet. I think that Florida has great doctors. I think that they take good care of their bodies, and I think that they treat the players and give them the rest that they need. And, again, starting the season with LIU and USF compared to starting with Miami, puts Florida in maybe a different position. I just hope that there's no more injuries for these guys, at least until the season starts. And, we know something's going to happen there.
I do think that it's so important to note that this is the first time in Napier's tenure at UF that he isn't opening with just an absolute blockbuster of a game. 2 years in a row of Utah and then Miami. This has to almost feel like, whew, okay, I get a second to get my feet under me. And that has not been the case. How beneficial you think is that in the long run of the season?
Listen, I never knew LIU had a Brooklyn campus, and I never knew LIU had a football team, right? So when they came on board, I think Florida was supposed to play FAMU to start this year, and then there were some scheduling issues. So, Florida should win that game with their third string backups by 40 points. So I think that it's important. I would love to see most of our starters out by the second quarter and at least the second half. The last thing that you want to see is an injury there. I do think that there's reps that they need to get under their belt. I think, whatever you're going to get out of LIU is going to be a different experience than what you get in practice. So you need those game reps and being able to secure that victory and then, carry a little bit of confidence into that USF game, and you win that game. Now you're carrying quite a bit more confidence heading into that LSU game instead of being 1-1 and people starting to question you. And there's a lot of noise around the program, right? So that's what I'm hopeful for. If Indiana can play Indiana State, Villanova, and whomever else, School of the Blind, then I'm happy that Florida can play one of these teams to just beat the crap out of them to start the year.
That's a nice little warm up for all of us. We can warm up our tailgating too.
That's right.
Who's your X factor on offense this season?
That's a great question. I think my X factor is Jacoby Jackson. I think Jacoby Jackson's the best running back on the team. I think that he runs differently. There's something about, some people have compared him to Frank Gore. That'd be awesome if he was. But I think that his ability to not just find the hole, but to be able to get those extra yards. He doesn't get tackled behind the line of scrimmage. He seemingly always gets a first down or very close to a first down. There's a lot of advanced statistics about the way that Jacoby Jackson runs. And I think he's going to be a player that a lot of people know his name by the end of the year. I think Jaden Ball is incredible, but I think the two-headed horse of them is going to wear a lot of teams down this upcoming season. So I'm going to go a little bit different. I think it's easy to say, Eugene Wilson, and I think he's great, J. Mike, but, I'm going to go Jacoby Jackson. I think that he ends up the season as a starting running back for whatever that means at Florida.
Right. Okay. What about on defense?
George Gums is a good pick. I'm going to go Tyreek Sapp. Just the other side of the defensive line there. I think that Tyreek Sapp is a guy that not only looks like just like a fifth-year NFL player right now, he's been super versatile at UF. I think that he has played defensive tackle. He's had to play nose tackle. This is his second year playing defensive end, which is the longest he's played any one position at the University of Florida in the 5 years that he's been there. I think that he's going to absolutely wear teams out, and I think that he's going to be a guy you see in the backfield often, and especially with having a guy like Cam James behind him, or if they throw Jaden Woods, back there too, to be able to keep him fresh throughout the game. I think that he's going to live in opponents' backfields this season.
All right. Well, that I was going to ask you the most important question, and that is special teams fixed finally?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I mean, we got to get 11 players on the field. I would like to see our game changers have a game-changing play. I know kickoff return right now just doesn't happen, right, in college or the NFL anymore. I would love to see, I know Take Hawkins, I know Vernell Brown. I know you've got some potential at punt returner there as an electric player. What I want to do is obviously make sure that we're not turning the ball over, right? So we're catching that punt, but have an opportunity maybe for a punt return touchdown. We haven't seen one of those in a while. We haven't seen a lot of field goal or PAT blocks recently. Right. We haven't seen a huge emphasis on special teams. I think if you look at Trey Smack, I think Trey Smack's a good kicker. I think he could be a great kicker. Tommy Doman, I hope he just does what he has to do at the punting position. Rocco Underwood could be a potential All-American long snapper, but I want to see an impact play, Allie. I want to see us block a kick. Like you were there, I was there in the game where Florida blocked 3 kicks against South Carolina. I don't know if we've blocked 3 kicks in the last 5 years combined. So I want to see something like that. That would get me jonesed and excited.
Yeah. I mean, every person that was in those Urban Meyer locker rooms knew the stat that if you block a kick, there is a 90% chance that you win the game. I mean, the girlfriend turned wife remembers the stat because it was hammered home so many times back then. And I kind of want to sneak into the locker room and just put that all over. It is block a kick, block a punt, win the game. 90% chance. And I hope that is being emphasized in the way that, us old timers would like it to be emphasized.